I'm Matt Annis. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy and Solutions Engineering at AmericanEagle.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gianna Neri. I'm our Sitefinity practice lead at AmericanEagle.com, and I also play a strategic project consultant role with many of our customers. So working a lot with them to identify and define their project and business goals and needs, and translating that into tangible website tactics that we can use to apply to their designs and builds. So,
Yeah, and we work together quite a bit with myself on the sales side, but connecting sales and delivery. Gianna taking the baton from there and into the next steps, which we feel uniquely positions us for the session we're about to embark on today. Before we do that, very quick introduction to those who aren't familiar of AmericanEagle.com. Over 25 years in business. We're a full-service digital agency, family-owned, and about 800 employees. So with that, I'll kind of set the frame here. Everyone has done a wonderful job in their sessions of making it clear that it's understood we're in a golden age of MarTech innovation. We are not going to say AI once in this. It's probably going to be like the simplest. We're going to look like cavemen up here with our presentation. But the truth is, every year the market gets more capable, more connected, more intelligent. And for almost any challenge you're facing, there's a product for it, or a dozen, built precisely to solve that problem, or at least that's how it's marketed. And it's a good thing, but the constant evolution, it unlocks a ton of incredible opportunities. It also created a bit of a reflex. We're seeing organizations, hit friction with their tech, and their first impulse is to look outward. Well, there's a product for that, so I'm going to move to that product instead of diagnosing why. Why are they having trouble with the tech that they're on? So today we're going to look into the root cause a little bit further, and I'm going to try and contextualize this further because we see it most heavily in CMS and DXP space. So we'll speak from the last year or two of running into this. In the CMS and DXP space specifically, we'll have organizations on the sales side come to us, especially in the last 2 years. And again, it's not uncommon otherwise, but the increase in the last 1 to 2 years has been a little alarming, saying we're looking to replatform. We have a few options in mind. We just need help, selecting the right one. And our question is always going to be, what's wrong, today? What are your issues with your current one? It's just not flexible enough. It's not. We thought it was going to give us more agility, more self-sufficiency, and here we are, using inline code, and we're dependent on the devs again. We can't make great landing pages like we had anticipated. And we'll ask them what CMS or DXP they're on, and there's a whole handful of the common ones, but more often than not, they're on the right platform or a right platform that can do all those things. So that begs the question of, so what is the real problem here, and why are they jumping so quickly to the conclusion that they need to replatform? I think that influx or the flood of marketing around all of the products that have rapidly been released in the last year or two plays a big role in that, but then also design is an overlooked aspect of how you end up in a position where you're not getting as much out of your platform. And most specifically, it's platform-aware design, which we're going to talk about in a second. But the misconception that flexibility is automatic. You get one of those nice DXPs, it's going to make you self-sufficient as a marketer. You're never going to have to talk to a dev again, and that's just never going to be the case. You got to at least, design for that platform and make it work for you. Sorry. All right. So it's not the actual design that we're talking about too. We're talking about the approach to design. So when approaching design, we want to be platform aware. We want to think blocks and not buildings. We want to challenge the design. We're going to get into each one of those in a minute here. But we really need, customers, organizations. We want them to understand these things. We want to talk about these things today because we don't want to see people throwing away good tech. Like, you're not even twisting the towel in a lot of cases, and you can wring every last drop out and get a lot further. Additionally, all the great things that were talked about by all the other great speakers, you want to be able to capitalize on those instead of investing into DXP every 3 years, or just leapfrogging to greener grass. So the nature of this session is to kind of step through what we believe to be the principles that allow you to avoid ending up in a scenario where you're not getting the most out of your CMS or your DXP. So be platform aware. Platform awareness is as much about making sure you're getting demos before you start planning and design, making sure that you have a sandbox set up, somebody understands the context. But even the littlest things like nomenclature can cause catastrophic problems if not aligned with the CMS, with the product. The word template can mean 1,000 different things nowadays. Same with widget, module, and those things carry big implications downstream once you get to launch. An understanding of, well, I was going to use the news article detail template. Well, that's not a page, that's a widget template. And it goes on in every different context for every different solution. So just aligning on nomenclature is a huge part of that. End of the day, that is pretty much it for platform aware. It's be aware that there are limitations, there are opportunities, there are just different strokes for these different CMSs, the different DXPs. The more you understand, the more you can control how you get the most out of your design. And it's not about working within the limitations, it's about maximizing what you can get out of it. It's not a blank canvas. You got to acknowledge that there's stuff off the shelf that if you don't know how to use it ahead of time, you're never going to be able to design effectively for it. And now I am gladly shifting to Gianna here to talk more about how we approach it more functionally.
Great. Okay, so now that you've introduced the CMS, you kind of understand its capabilities, its boundaries, you want to identify kind of high-level components that are going to be necessary for your site. That's going to help you determine what pages you actually design for, but also what pages you can build with once you're in implementation. Because obviously you're not and shouldn't design for every single page and try to cover every single feature, but you do want to pick the ones that are going to be important enough for functionality, but also see general content in practice. So something we like to tell our clients is think Lego blocks, not buildings or kind of those specialty sets with the picture on the front that you see. Templates or highly specialized designs are going to be like those pre-built houses or those specialty sets. They're pretty and they're unique, but they're fixed. Whereas your toolkit is going to be more like the Lego set you see on the left side there. You have structured, reusable pieces that can be combined to make anything kind of come together while still being consistent to your base set. And that gives you freedom through structure. So if you buy that specialty Lego set, maybe you can repurpose it, build a different set, or add on to your original, but you're limited because it's very custom and specialized to what you built originally. It doesn't really give you that flexibility or longevity. Whereas the toolkit allows you to build multiple sets or iterate off of what you already did. It gives you greater combination and opportunity there. So how do you go about identifying the components that you need for your site? So start with foundational content pieces that are typically static, but pretty commonplace to any website. So your content blocks, callouts, cards, form controls, etc. You can probably pretty easily identify use cases for these that you need. Something like your homepage hero, interior headings, a contact us form, things your website's going to need. Then you can focus on more of your content-rich, structured content types like blogs, news, events, documents. Even at this stage in the game, probably at a high level, you're going to need a featured view of that kind of content, a listing view, a detail view. And then finally, you can turn your focus to custom feature-rich components. So maybe on your site you have a location or locator tool. Where does that need to show up elsewhere on the site? There's specific location page, but is there a homepage feature? Is it kind of peppered into some interior pages? You're inventorying all the different elements of your site, and how they need to come together is something we would do in the next step, but you're essentially identifying the building blocks of your toolkit.
And really, it's okay to start with your traditional homepage with, a few key landing pages, but just as long as you're looking through the lens of those are representative of an ecosystem of components that you're going to rely on to cover a whole lot of ground beyond launch. We'll talk about how you select, the right pages here as well.
Yeah, so now you have those components identified, or the pieces of your toolkit, if you will, and we want to determine what pages you're actually going to design for in that graphics phase. So here's where we see a lot of clients make a similar mistake where, they start designing way too many pages up front without choosing strategically some pages that are going to be representative of functionality, show that greater content variety. We understand that the graphics phase has a lot of eyes on it, right? Like you have stakeholders, higher ups that want to see this and understand what did I just spend all this money on? What are we building? And so you want to churn out those designs, but again, that could pigeonhole you later if you start moving too fast without giving that foresight ahead of it. So you want to pick the pages that represent your main content types and kind of test those different components in different situations, because you're not only going to cut down time in the graphics phase, but you're going to save time in the development phase as well as give yourself better coverage for the rest of your site. So when picking those pages, you want to start with those kind of flagship high visibility pages. So these are going to be the pages that demonstrate what your brand is, how it shows up online. They're probably going to be the most valuable to those stakeholders or the other people involved in the approval process. So this is where, homepage is an obvious one, but any other critical landing pages fall into this category. From there, you can start thinking about functional, kind of feature-rich pages. These should start to highlight some of the more complex functionality on your site that we definitely want to see in design. We don't want to leave a gap between the graphics phase and development and kind of leave it up to the developers to take their best swing at it. Ultimately, that's keeping dev time down, but you're going into it with a plan again. So this could be things like if you have a resource library or maybe a product catalog. Those are all great contenders for that type of page as well. And then finally, more foundational pages. So this is where you want to show how content is starting to deviate across the site. So this is where maybe those components we identified, you're starting to mix and match them on pages in different variations. Your content team, they're going to need to be doing this in actuality. So what are some of those pages that represent a lot of those use cases for them? And now that you have your pages picked, we've mentioned that you're not going to design every single page. And you may panic that, oh, well, we don't see this feature. I haven't seen this feature. What does that look like? So one of your most valuable assets is going to be what we call a utility page or kitchen sink type of page. It's not creating more full design comps. It's this utility page that could really test your system and show how these components that we've identified in the first step can be mixed and matched together. So it's going to show those variations, different edge cases that maybe don't make sense to design for. Again, saves a lot of design time. We don't need a designer to design 5 or 10 more pages just to see something simple like what our FAQs going to look like, or what we need a call out that's going to send users here, but we want it to be a wider format. We don't have to build full comps for these types of things. We can throw them into this utility page and cut down on that design time, but also save dev time. So again, we're giving the developers more things to reference when it comes time to build without investing too much in that graphics phase.
And just to add to, there's a lot of hype around design systems and a lot of the advanced AI aspects of being able to generate the code right from there and all of that. But it's like what we see is either organizations are taking it to that extreme or they're not doing this at all. And the ones who find themselves in this position are those who just feel too much pressure from the stakeholders to focus on just these experiences and get right into dev. And it's not intentional, but there are, again, it seems silly, but there are just little exercises that can be done, even if it's just mentally or copying and pasting the regions out of the designs and, doing a card sorting exercise to say, if I had to do a great campaign landing page, do I have the pieces to do that? And it's probably going to catalyze a lot of great questions for, your vendor, your developers of, will this be able to do that? Because I need this with an image and without an image, with a button, without a button. So really putting it through its paces.
Mhm. Yeah, this isn't a design that's, meant for your end users. It's really for your content team to be able to say, I know at some point I have to put together a page like this. Do those components exist for me to reference and pull that together? So you're essentially creating that toolkit or Lego set, if you will, that keeps cohesion in your site's branding. Again, cutting back on the graphics time. And one other note here is to consider is that it might sound counterintuitive to say less versatility is a good thing, but when you limit variation and focus on these reusable components, you're gaining consistency, speed, and control. So your content authors and creators, they still have a ton of flexibility to build what they need, but it's within smart, intentional boundaries that you've put in place that keeps everything consistent. Okay, so you've identified your toolkit, you've designed, you have your utility page. You might think, okay, we're done with graphics now. But this is where we encourage our clients to start challenging their design. What we mean by that is now, we've thought through how the components are meant to serve some of these scenarios we're not actually using or seeing in the graphics phase, but we actually want to put that to its paces and test that out. So what are those different scenarios that are going to come up eventually? Do we have what we need for that someday? You don't want to get all the way to the finish line of your project and realize, oh, we kind of have to do this all over again because we forgot all X, Y, and Z scenarios that we know are coming up. So a big part of designing for autonomy and scale is asking the right questions and asking them early. So things like, what happens when the marketing department comes to us next year and says they don't like how the product pages look anymore or the layout of the content on the page? Or what do we do when our blog content starts doubling? What's that going to look like? Your design should hold up in these scenarios for the most part. You shouldn't have to run back to your development team and reconfigure how things were set up. So again, if you're asking those questions before launch, it'll pay off later. Okay, so I guess a little more on how you challenge it. So you want to pick scenarios, again, that aren't covered. Pick those random pages we didn't see in design. Like, is there a level 3 deep interior page that, it has to be made by someone? Look at that utility page we've designed. Are those components there that I could pick and piece together and build that page? What about like our careers page? We didn't design that, but do I see the elements I need to be able to put that together? Before developers are even building anything, you're going through this practice to ensure that you do have that longevity and you're validating that utility page you threw together, that it's covering your bases.
And honestly, pick the easiest one first too, because you'd just be surprised at the questions that come up, or you might visualize it in your head like, this looks good, I've got plenty of that, that'll cover it. But you don't know till it's post-launch, and now the flexibility you thought you had for the most basic page isn't accounted for. But it's so easy to cover that at this point in time. Okay, so takeaways. I mean, we covered a good amount of it. It sounds simple. It's something that, between us, I'm going on 13 years of doing this, 11 or 12, right? And so we're seeing it firsthand way more often than anyone would expect. And with all the hype around these new products, which is inevitable and appealing, really got to make sure that you're not putting yourself in tech debt unnecessarily and really looking to get the most out of what you have today. And I'm also not encouraging anyone to not consider, moving to Sitefinity or looking at options or solutions like that, but intentionally based on things that are more tangible that you want to have that you just can't have today. But the reality is most of these CMS DXPs can do a lot of the same things. And if you're really having that big of a problem with one, you got to look deeper. So doing that really comes down to that platform awareness, giving your content teams the best understanding of the components of the platform, and the flexibility that you can up front, and then challenging that design. Because when your systems and your content platform, they're aligned, you've built with intention, the technology starts working for you instead of the other way around, and you don't have to wait until you're asking yourself if you should move to another CMS. If you start feeling that way, most of the time it's not too late. You can go back and start thinking this way with each thing you do next, and really recover a heavy investment that the organization has made.
And we kind of frame this, more in the like full rebuild, redesign, lens, but it would be the same practice we would walk our clients through if they were just adding a chatbot to their site or adding a new feature. Planning is always important. I think everyone knows that, but it somehow seems to get lost sometimes, and we were here to remind you. Okay, so thank you for hearing us out. We'll be around if you want to find us and connect, or feel free to reach out to us. Our company is offering one free website health audit. So if you're interested, scan the QR code there and
Submit the form.
see if you are chosen.
Yeah, but appreciate it. And thank you to everyone at Progress for putting on the event and giving us the opportunity to speak. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm interested a little bit in the last slide, if you can turn back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you're listing these elements, which I agree with all of them, but is this the order actually, or these are the elements that need to be covered? I'm asking that because if a brand has an identity, has a content, have a vision, is the platform the first thing that they need to decide and then build their content and everything based on the platform capabilities, or the other way around? Can you collaborate a little bit on that process, how this actually works?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say there's probably a little flexibility there, but we do like to bring this, whatever the platform is that's chosen early and often. It's not necessarily step one, but we wouldn't want to go too long without introducing it, just because there are, different platforms do have different tools out of the box, or different boundaries, if you will, that we'd have to stay within. So you wouldn't want to get too far along in the planning and find that, oh, well, actually this platform handles this a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I mean, ideally, if you were just coming in fresh and looking at new DXP, certainly encourage anyone to work backwards early and say, what does my marketing team need? What does my content team want? And all those things. You might not get something that solves all across the board, but yeah, you definitely want planning and intent to go in. Unfortunately, in the case we're talking about, is more of like a pivot from a impulse decision, and where they don't have quite as much time to do that.
Yeah, certainly the step of, where we're identifying the Lego kit, if you will. I mean, that's you defining what's necessary for your website. So that could happen with or without knowing the platform yet. But when you start getting into design, I would say knowing the platform is going to be a helpful tool.
Yeah, once you've picked your platform, this would be the order, is short answer.
We have another question over here.
I liked your utility pages that you had up there. It's something I encourage us to do, but a lot of times the clients want to move faster than that allows. But it's not where I was going. I was wondering, like, how much of that happens in something like Figma first, and you get it all done, and then you're kind of creating the utility pages as the devs create the widgets, versus like, oh, we've done this design, we create all the components and widgets, and then we start building the site.
Yeah, most often it for, we'll say, non-enterprise or mid-level, we work backwards from the key designs, see what that inventory looks like first, and look to identify gaps. Because it is very difficult to start with the mindset of a design system if you don't know how it's going to come back together. So it's a little bit of a push and a pull there. But typically, get those key experiences done and see how much ground you covered, and then you fill the gaps.